why fintechs are important in terms of making SMEs and accessible finance. If you look at it across emerging markets, there's quite a big funding gap for SMEs. It's a challenge not just in Nigeria, it's a challenge across all emerging markets itself. So when Rainfin was started, which is the business that I'm with, we looked at this and we said, how can technology actually improve access to finance and thereby enabling the ecosystem massively? And essentially what we figured out was one of the big problems was there's all this data that is available that traditionally falls outside of the way that SMEs or businesses or borrowers are traditionally scored. That process is generally utilized, that they utilize is known as FICO, and they utilize very traditional data. So for example, they look at things like affordability, income, they look at your credit bureau, your credit data, and that's all good and well when you have those types of ecosystems and database existing. When you don't have those existing, you need to rely on very different data points in order to risk assess businesses. The challenge is utilizing alternative data points is in its own right very challenging because most people who are suppliers of capital don't rely because there's no history in terms of utilizing those alternative data points. So when Rainfin started off, what we said was, okay, we look at South Africa, and South Africa is a good example of we've got an established ecosystem and we can rely on traditional FICO, but what we tend to do is we tend to run alternative data points in parallel to FICO, so we start to build some type of performance history in regard to scoring SMEs very, very differently. When we look at markets like China or in Asia, you have companies like Alipay and stuff that are doing this in a lot more in an advanced way. So they've taken alternative data points to score SMEs and better price SME risk to another level. It's completely. They're utilizing mobile network operation. They're utilizing transactional data. So where we are from a Rainfin perspective is we've been in business for about 5 years, and we have run the traditional method as well as a new method to score businesses. Why do we believe that this is efficient and how this will create value from an ecosystem play and enabling ecosystems? I think what's going to happen is more and more, there's a lot of capital available. You know, I was chatting to people and colleagues of mine. When you look at development banks, institutional investors like asset managers, even banks in their traditional form, they want to lend to SMEs. They just don't have the infrastructure to do that. They don't have the infrastructure to score SMEs differently, utilizing different data points. And those alternatives that do exist, things like invoice factoring, supply chain finance, people are doing that and businesses are doing that in a very manually orientated way. So what's happening is the price at which they're pricing those alternatives is very high. In some respects, you can call it exploitative. So businesses like Rainfin and other fintech players, essentially what they're doing is they're bringing massive efficiencies by utilizing technology into those processes and are giving suppliers of capital opportunities and infrastructure to better assess risk from a SME point of view and price that risk, and then to enable distribution. So that's where I think that the biggest value of fintechs will be. You know, it's basically utilizing technology to bring efficiency into an ecosystem that is predominantly manual at the moment.